Welcome everybody to The Other Scopes, a Schneider Electric podcast where the idea is to look at sustainability not so much from the business perspective we are used to as sustainability consultants, but rather from a more everyday life angle. We, in this case, is my colleague Rebeka Eros.
And my colleague Moritz Scholz, both working as sustainability consultants at the Schneider Electric office in Budapest. Thanks everybody for joining.
So in the first episode of The Other Scopes, we were looking a bit deeper into what sustainability means in the music industry. And for the second episode, we had a really good discussion about resource intensity in denim production. And for today, we want to talk about kind of what I think is the art form that for some 100 years now can be considered as the uncontested champion of entertainment, which is the movie industry, with all its little brothers and sisters that might be like the television and streaming and so on and so forth.
And I think that we all agree that for such a topic, there could not be better invited than the company called GreenEyes Production, which is present in Budapest and in the UK, and from where I am fortunate enough to welcome Julia Tordai and Zsófia Szemerédi. Julie, Zsófi, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks again. Looking forward to chatting to you guys.
Brilliant. Thanks for being here. And I think as a sort of introductory question, and given that we talk about movies, I would actually be curious to know what are your personal favorite movies and what are its respective carbon footprints, if you know about it.
I think it's a really hard question for me because it's a similar question that what is your favorite food? It's really hard to answer because I have too many. Zsófi, I will pass it on you because I know you are a huge sci-fi fan, so.
Yeah, but that means I also have a lot to choose from. But you'll have to say one as well. I will say my ultimate one, which is Star Wars, obviously. And I do not know the carbon footprint of either of the Star Wars movies. Well, not either. Any of the Star Wars movies, unfortunately. And if I have to say a couple of series, then I'll say I really like all the sci-fi stuff that's coming out. So The Power and The Foundation, Dune, Wheel of Time, and the rest of them. Sorry, just to name a few.
Now that's quite interesting. Have you been working on one of those actually?
We've been working our first. I will start with our very first project because it was not. Was it a sci-fi? It was actually a Marvel series, Marvel's Moon Knight. It featured Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke. And it was 2 years ago when our whole journey started. It was 8 months shoot here in Budapest. And before, like, we already started like talking about this topic 3 years ago. We worked on the same film production and started reaching out to different industry people. And then we just get an email from Marvel that they were planning a Budapest shoot, and if we want to join as sustainable stewards, they call it environmental stewards because our name has also different naming. So somewhere they call it eco people, somewhere it's sustainable steward. So a lot of different meanings.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we haven't worked on any of those. So if someone wants to hire us for some of the biggest sci-fi, we're ready.
And we did our homework to learn how you two met. So I assume that was before you had your first project. And my question is about what were your initial thoughts and impression of each other? Maybe if you had any big challenges at the beginning that you are comfortable sharing with us, I think, and also the successes.
I don't know, we're coming to psychology. First impressions. Well, we met at the office And I think my first impression was, thanks God someone understands sustainability, and she's also so shocked, as I am, that there's no recycling and that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then we just got on really well.
Yeah, and we looked at each other. We both had green eyes, so we started like kind of with our name, with our company name. So and we both lived in foreign countries. I kind of grew up in Germany, and Zsófia lived in the UK quite for a long time. So we saw good examples. So there, like, recycling was, like totally everyday stuff. So we were shocked that those huge productions don't have anything in place yet here in Hungary, and if they go to foreign territories. So yeah, that's how we started.
That's very interesting, and also thanks for taking away one question that I would have considered maybe a bit, not appropriate, because I don't want to approach and looking into your eyes kind of in a way and see that they're really green. But now that we kind of, we know that's where the...
Oh yeah, we've got an internal policy. We only hire people with green eyes. That's discrimination. No, I'm joking. I think we hired someone who doesn't have green eyes now.
And this is still with the company, or...?
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of good to know. Maybe following up with something on what you were just saying as well. So I understood correctly that for the work you're doing on the set itself, there's not really yet maybe not a really like designated role. So everybody calls it a bit different, which is kind of very... I would say strange in the movie industry. Is it? Because like especially if we think of the US, all the guilds they're having.
I don't think it's that strange, to be fair. Sorry to cut you off, just really quickly, because in the US you would call it costume wardrobe. Like, you still have different titles and different names, and we also have different departments in the UK. So for example, for us in the UK it would be location department that handles waste, but in Hungary it would be the unit department that handles waste. So there are different conventions for it and falls under a different remit. And for ourselves, it's because there's no regulation around it, there's no convention for the word itself and for our job, so the hierarchy hasn't been developed yet, kind of. It's not ingrained in the entire system, so how in every department there's an ingrained hierarchy and a step ladder that you gotta climb that ladder. Otherwise, you're not going to get to the top. No, I'm joking. The movie industry is about zigzags. You can always get to the top. And surprise, there's a lot of men on the top and less women. But we're changing that as well. And so that's it. So every country has different naming conventions for our job.
But I think that there are more and more conversations around this to unify it, because it makes, our job so much easier to have a clue what we are doing exactly, and it's a really complex thing. But if we call ourselves environmental someone on a set, then it's only about the environmental issues. And if we call it sustainability, then it covers also like the environmental aspects of it, the social aspects of it, and also the economical aspects of it. And I don't know, like eco, what it stands for. Yeah, maybe the people are hired to watch out for eco labels or so on. But anyway, I think it's a nice thing if there would be a unification and to describe our role, exactly what we are doing.
That would be exactly, this is kind of the way where I wanted to get to. So my impression of the American, especially the American industry, was always, it's very kind of, I would call it institutionalized. So every role is very well designed and so on and so forth. Of course, that it might differ between different countries, but even in the US, you would say the role you are doing on set is not yet, I would say, sort of institutionalized, but you're kind of getting the feeling you're getting there because it's getting more and more important, correct?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we're learning on the fly, that's for sure. And you keep expanding your entire remit, and every day you're learning something new. However, I think it would I so agree with Julia. We would definitely benefit from having a framework around it, because when you have a framework around what you're doing, everyone else knows what to expect from you as well. And you can push the boundaries only if you've got boundaries. So, for example, the role of a coordinator or the role of a PA or the role of a manager is kind of set in stone within production, and it comes with perks and benefits. Well, I don't mean the perks and benefits, but it comes with a set of agreed criteria, I guess. And if they know that we fall into that box, it sounds weird. No one wants to get into a box, but because we're such a new department, our goal is actually to be an official department. We can do that when we have titles that are approved by everyone almost. We're going against the tide in that respect.
And which departments are you working most together with? Or I also wanted to ask if you could briefly describe what is exactly your biggest role now, or maybe just those things that you do the most.
In terms of GreenEyes, we mostly focus on production. Well, we mostly focused on production from the start, but now we're expanding and we're doing a lot more than that, because we have a view that we call it a holistic view, and we want to change the entire film industry.
And also like how the whole film industry works. There is an expression I think is really good for association, that the film industry is kind of like a traveling circus. Basically, every film production is different. So we go to different locations, and we have a lot of departments, which are like costume department, and then we have art department, then we have unit or location department, and kind of like all the other industries are in the film industry, and we are then from one location we go to the other location, kind of, like the whole crew, 200 people, or if it's a smaller one, then like just 15 people, or everything in between those numbers. And we need to set up everything really quickly, and also the other departments.
It's super interesting, and it actually matches quite well with another question we kind of thought of. Where exactly in the process are you brought in?
Well, this is a good question, where we're brought in, but where should we be brought in? I think that's even a better question. At the moment, we're currently brought in at pre-production stage. Usually, if it's a tentpole production, we brought in about 8 weeks out, and it's varied on each project. So there was a project when we were brought in on principal photography, which is day one of shooting. We can do a lot less when we start on day one, because everything is running already. The entire logistics are done. When we brought in 8 weeks out, that's kind of like a sweeter spot. We've got a little bit more time. Then we had another production when we were brought in 16 weeks out. That was so much better. But what we're actually advocating for is that we're brought in a script stage, a green light stage, when the budgets are done, because that's when you have the biggest impact. That's when you can talk to the key decision makers and talk to them about how do you allocate your money? Why are you traveling there? How are you traveling there with the crew? What kind of vehicle are you using? Are you building sets? All the things that have a carbon effect, and perhaps they don't think about it. And I think it's quite like there was research, I like mentioning it, that a couple of writers were asked, like, have you ever thought about the budget implication of your words? And they were like, sure, I change my writing all the time because of the budget. And they're like, and have you ever thought about the carbon impact of your words? No, never.
Yeah, we had a question around this, that based on your words, it's clear then that they tend to change the story quite a lot. Have you ever came across example where they changed the locations of the movie, for example, like just to become more sustainable, they don't shoot in several countries, or they don't set the story in several countries, rather there's just one? Like there's a lot of action movies, for example, where they travel to some distant places to shoot the really exciting European scenes. Did you had the chance to change this in a way?
I think at the moment we are not there yet. So these decisions are probably made because of budgetary reasons and not sustainability reasons. But I think if the two matches together, we are good. And also we have good examples. One of the head of productions, we work together in the UK, like he's really concerned. So he is already looking at from the budgeting side, and he will, I'm sure, choose locations and not to travel much or travel by train. So, in between countries where the crew can choose the train instead of flying, for instance.
Yeah. Can I also add that I think we can talk about production service countries here, because I think that matters a lot. So as Julia says, budgets tend to go hand in hand with the travel, depending on where you're shooting. And there are certain production hubs, such as Hungary itself, which is a production service hub. So our country, and especially Budapest, can be dressed up and play Paris, Berlin, Munich, Prague, whatever you want. It can almost play it. Russia, yes. Yeah. The Red Sparrow, for example, was shot here. So in that sense, we had a production, for example, where it was mostly for budgetary considerations. We came on board too late. I mean, we wouldn't even have the chance. But the production was shooting 3 countries in Hungary, and they built the sets. So instead of traveling 200, 300 people there, they built the sets here. Now, we didn't have the means to actually calculate the proper data around it. What was the carbon footprint of building the sets, and what would have been the carbon footprint of traveling the production there. But it was certainly cheaper than going to France and going to Lisbon and going to somewhere else.
Do you have a budget set aside that, just for sustainability? In these planning phases, as I understand, the earlier the better. So if you have budget allocated only for sustainability at the beginning, you are pretty much at a good space to start, maybe?
We are doing that, yes. And it's also a really good thing for us to see, how much is our budget if we have, a small amount for R&Ds and, trial out new things. So it gives us a lot of freedom. So yeah, on the production we work on, we always try to fight for a budget, for a sustainability budget, and then track it through the whole project.
So it's existent.
Yeah, it is.
Great.
But it needs to increase. I mean, have no doubt. It has to increase. It's so marginal compared to other departments that it is genuinely a joke.
I would maybe have a follow-up question on this, but I think to have this follow-up question, there would be a pre-follow-up question kind of in a way. And I think this would be, what is actually causing the biggest impact when we talk about movie production?
So the biggest carbon impact on a film production, it's energy and fuel. And you can have the question why we use so much energy and fuel on a film production. So when we are studio-based, then we use the energy of the studio. If we are on location, then if we are lucky, we can connect to the grid. So we have local power available, but if not, we need to use generators to have electricity in place.
Is it as easy as this, that we can say, okay, if ever we shoot within an urban environment, we can go to the grid? If we kind of on the countryside, it's generators, or it's a bit more complicated than this?
More complicated, because you need to have enough electricity also in urban environment. We use much more energy than a household would use. So we need to build out grid cabinets, and then it's not always available, and it takes time. And it also depends on the current market situation, how much electricity costs, because there can be situations when the electricity costs more than fuel. So it's sometimes also an economical reason, but anyway, so it's not always that easy, but ideally it would be, like a studio where they have renewable power available, and we can have that power available. So that would be green, really green. But this is not the reality yet. So We also have some numbers for this. So on our recent production, for 6 months, we used 700 megawatt hours of electricity.
For the Budapest shooting only, or for the...
Yes, it was mainly a studio-based shoot, and for the 6 months, so it's a lot of energy, and what we need this energy for. So we have the lighting department, so every light we use for production, it's a huge amount of energy needed for that. And then we have the unit and location department, which is running the catering, and then also camera department, sound department, SFX department. So each little department, bigger department, they need energy.
Yeah, and I think there's like an interesting thing to your question as well in terms of like the allocation, how to spread the infrastructure around energy as well, because that's also an issue. Because even if you have a grid cabinet, we have different locations when we move out onto location. There are like 3 main things: the unit base, the location itself, and the tech base next to it, and they're not always next to each other. So there can be quite a distance between, and each department that Julia just listed can have different kind of energy needs and can be located quite far away from each other. And even within one department, when you're in the lighting department, you might have an insane amount of energy requirement that comes from all corners. You have to put a tower light up there and a sky panel up there and another one behind us. And then you're suddenly, and cabling is very time consuming. It's very difficult. It's quite expensive as well. So it's a very complex question. But for example, we recently heard it. I think we heard it for the 2nd time now, which is actually quite reassuring, that it used to be the lighting department that was using the most energy. It's no longer the case because technology finally achieved a point. The LED lighting is there. The DPs, the camera operators, they actually think about, okay, we can use that kind of lighting now. So when they ask the lighting department, they'll bring that lighting. And so sometimes the lighting department consumes less now than all the surrounding equipment. And by surrounding equipment, we mean what Julia was listing: the catering bus, the crafty, the generator, the heaters for the generators, the air conditioning in the summer. So in the summer, we have to have very cool tents. In the winter, we have to have very warm tents. But you consume a lot of energy with those equipment around it. And we heard it for the 2nd time now that it exceeds what the lighting requires. So, yeah, times are changing. And this is literally just general setup, and we haven't even talked about how each genre has different kind of requirements.
Talking about genres, do you know which one is the most emission heavy? Or
I have data for you.
Great,
actually.
love data. And do you have any difference between like a movie or a series? Or
for sure. You've got differences between. The main difference, for example, in this report that we're bringing data for you from, everyone can check it out, is the Sustainable Production Alliance's report, which is quite recent, I think about 1 year old. The main difference that we make is between scripted and unscripted. So under scripted, you would have films and high-end TV drama kind of series that you watch. That's quite addictive, right? And on the non-scripted, you would have your television shows, your Love Island, your documentary, all the kind of like quiz shows kind of stuff. So there's a lot of difference between them. It's very much dependent on whether you have to travel or whether you're staying at a studio. And I'll just give you a couple of data that I think is quite interesting. So for example, for unscripted, and we probably shouldn't have like named an actual series, but let's say a series where you do sports on an exotic island really far away kind of series. It's not that, I mean, it's an average data, but I'm just trying to classify it. So something like that when you go to the Dominic Islands, where they shoot actually, I think at least like 15, 20 different kind of series that are quite similar their formats. So for that, air travel is the worst. It's a lot worse than utilities. But if you, for example, look at a 1 hour scripted drama, utilities is proportionately bigger than it is for unscripted. And Fuel for 1 hour scripted drama is the highest one out of everything else. For unscripted, Fuel is actually quite marginal because you're probably flying to that location. So it's very interesting, I think.
So I guess energy and all this technical input you just gave is also part of your consulting work, right? So better go for LED and so on and so forth. What are the other levers where you can kind of make a difference?
I mean, I think that's the plan. That's why we're saying that, when they bring us on board and like 8 weeks out, we don't have that much time to prep. When they bring us on board a little bit earlier. So I will tell you the ideal scenario. So if anyone hires us, they'll hire us with these.
This is what you will get then.
So if it's a big project, bring us on board at script stage. It doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but we can assess the script. We can talk to your key decision makers, your development execs, your line producers, those who make the line producer is the one who makes your budget, for example. We can talk through the impact of what you're planning on doing, because that's everything. What are you planning? How are you planning to schedule your movie? That will decide all of it, right? And when you go into production, you decided which country you're shooting in, how big is your crew, are you building sets, are you traveling, all that kind of stuff. Bring us on board for a longer period of time and let us crew up and actually do the logistics. And we will know we will know the region, we'll know the vendors, we will do the supply chain check and everything, and we will do the entire setup. So gearing up towards production, day one of principal shooting, our job is the most intense. It is similar with some other departments. Some departments are most intense when they're in production. Other departments like us, we're very intense during prep time. And it's all about collaboration with the other departments. And after that, what we're doing is, so we've done, like, for example, in the prep department, in the prep stage, we would have done energy management and energy audit, for example, do the waste management plan, discuss it with the production, whether they want to have, I don't know, vegan, vegetarian meals, they want to reduce their carbon footprint that way, what kind of commitments they're willing to sign actually and announce to the crew, because there will be a pledge that we will be asking them. And we want them to, be reasonable. Like, can you agree to do these 10 things? Then we'll hold you accountable and we will work a lot to actually make sure you're doing all of that. And so that what happens in prep stage, in production, we're doing our job, implementing all of this. And after that, we will be giving them a really detailed report on, this is what we think you've done really well. This is the data to back it up. And this is what we recommend you to do differently on your next production.
Talking about commitment, are there any examples of production companies committing to sustainability targets or carbon reduction targets? If yes, how ambitious they are?
They're nice, huge names like Netflix, Disney, Apple, Sony, Viacom, Paramount, and they have different commitment goals. So Netflix, really ambitious, net zero 2022, so last year. Disney, carbon zero by 2030. Viacom, CBS is just like having SDG targets. So different commitment goals. And I think it's a really great thing because they're like the big names, so everyone else is following them. And also they're coming here to Hungary with all those big budget productions, and they try to implement the sustainability goals. So I think this is really driving our industry, and it's also affecting the whole vendor and supply chain. So now a lot of studio sound stages here in Hungary are looking into how to implement or invest in new greener strategies, or like talking about energy, how to have like instead of generators battery packs available.
So there's definitely a change already happening, and as I understand it, forces the Hungarian landscape as well to adapt. Do you have any competitors currently? I mean, as I see, you're quite the first, based on my knowledge, but internationally, nationally, how do you rank yourself as a consultancy firm?
It's very hard to get out of that mindset when we call them competitors, but honestly, we're trying to work together with all of them. So there are a couple of other companies who are doing the same stuff as we do, but we literally have like WhatsApp chats with everyone together from all around the globe, from different countries. We have more than 120 sustainability consultants in that group, kind of like talking about everyday issues. So let's say you'll have an issue on set saying like, how can I find a solution or a vendor for something? And someone else will come back and, in Guatemala or in France or in New Zealand, this is what we do. And it will be a great example, and we really like that. And there are a couple of other companies, obviously, who started before us, and bigger organizations that are not necessarily sustainability consultants. So the whole trend started about 15 years ago. It was Real Green in Canada, Albert in the UK, and then the Sustainable Production Alliance in the US. Those were the pillars of this. And none of them are sustainability consultants. They're all fully fledged companies teaching, advocating. Some has calculators, all of that. And then some of the companies who have started in the UK came a little bit after that, and they still exist. And we work really closely with them. So I think it's nice because we can't really talk about competitors within sustainability as naive as that sounds, but we were asked this before when we were working for two companies at the same time who are a little bit of competitors of each other in one territory, and we were asked by the crew, like, how come you can work on both projects for each company? And we're like, we can't achieve sustainability or net zero or any of our goals alone. I mean, if I'm racing that alone and everyone stays behind, then what's the point of that? So obviously, we want to bring everyone with us.
So you have a whole community, basically. This is really interesting because I think we come more from the business side of sustainability in a way. And it's great to hear that there's a way of sustainability which is all about sharing best practices.
I think we definitely have no WhatsApp group with our competitors, so it's like
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's a conflict. There's an internal conflict because obviously we're not a non-profit company, right? We still have to pay our staff and pay our bills, but it would be great to pay ourselves as well. Good amount of amazing salaries, obviously. But at the same time, there's also this altruistic approach in both of us and in everyone who we work with, that we have a shared and common goal. So, for example, that's why we're doing a lot of the teaching stuff. The more people in the industry knows about sustainability and what they can do there on the job and in their everyday life, the easier our job gets, and we'll benefit from it eventually.
But maybe getting quickly back to something that I think we have been talking about when you've mentioned like competition. If we talk about movie shooting in general, we see, I think, that there's a kind of like international competition to attract movies, like movie scene. I think when we're talking in Europe, I think Spain and Malta are particularly active. I think there are different schemes like this tax back, or I think even this cash back, where basically kind of like for every dollar you spend, you get like a percentage back. I think in the case of Malta, it even goes up to 40%. I think now in the Middle East, countries getting very, kind of active about it. They want to track those movie shoots. And then you've been saying before, okay, but there's also like now this huge consideration about sustainability. Do you think that in the future, the sustainability part could even become as big as this budgetary subsidiary part when it comes to attracting movie locations?
Yeah, 100% sure that this will be in the future. And already now we see examples. So Austria introduced last year a new tax incentive. So they have like a 30% tax incentive and a plus 5% if you produced it green. So you just receive it if it's really certified green production. So I think it's more and more common in France. The CNC introduced also last year that each film production needs to have like carbon report data available, and they need to collect it so they get the money.
I think it's also really hard. Like, you asked if it can ever get to, like, if it can be ever as important as the money aspect itself. And I do think there are different kind of changes in the make right now. Like, for example, with Julia, we're working on a report as well, which is kind of a policy recommendation report that thinks about the tax incentives and minimum standards. And for example, I'll pose a question like, is money enough to incentivize it, just the production, or do we also need a minimum standard to introduce? Because what if you don't know what is the basics that you have to achieve? And also, who's going to check you that you achieve that? So it's kind of like, it's a three-prong approach in some sense. So yes, incentivize it fiscally. For example, New Zealand just introduced a new tax incentive. It's tied to their tax incentive, the sustainability requirements, which is pretty exciting. But also have minimum standards like they have in Germany, and perhaps start looking into who can audit it, because otherwise it's just a free-for-all in some sense. And yeah, I agree. Like, these kind of schemes are currently designed to basically boost the economy by actually getting the crew there, making sure that they all travel there, they spend their money there. There are different kind of incentives for post-production. Some of these incentives, like some of the production funds, for example, stipulate you have to get equipment from the country where you're getting the support from. So if you're doing the co-production, you might be shooting in country B, but you have to get your equipment from country A, and you have to get travel the equipment there on gigantic trucks. So in some sense, all these incentives, all the contracts, all the funds, all the schemes are out there should start with, okay, let's stop, take a step back. Let's consider it from a sustainability point of view as well. And then when I redesign it, my basis will be, I want to make sure it's as sustainable as possible. I collaborate with the others, but obviously I will also have to boost my own economy.
Sounds promising. If all of this will become the new normal.
Oh, we live in a sci-fi utopia.
Hopefully the better version. And I have a quick question, I think, before closing. You mentioned that you have all these bigger companies as well that are already working on this. You have a couple of consultancy firms like yourself. And do you have dedicated people from the production companies to be your main point of contact, or you just hunt down anyone you can who is willing to collaborate with you during the project and rely on them as an internal resource?
It's case by case, but you have to identify the key decision makers at each group. At a film fund, your key decision maker will be different to a production company. At a production company, you're probably going to start with the head of production and some of the producers, line producers, executives. And same at a studio, you're probably going to start from an exec level where they can actually, draw a line and really make a difference. So always pinpoint who can be the biggest influence. But also, I would add, do not disregard someone who's coming from the bottom up and all the assistants and everyone, because there are so many studies that state that when your standard of work is, let's say, average and good, sustainability becomes a decision-making factor as well. And there are a lot of people in our society who leave their job because they feel like they don't want to work for a certain company if their approach is not good.
So I think we have been talking a lot about the producers, the kind of like the initiatives behind it, very much from a business side, but what actually about the spectators? And I'm thinking particularly of the thing which is like kind of the thing now, I think, which is streaming. And in this episode we did about the music industry, we actually figured out that we don't know how much, because like not much is disclosed about it, but streaming in general has quite a huge impact from an energy perspective. Is it the same in the movie industry? And would you actually go so far that saying, hey, it might even be more sustainable to watch a movie in the cinema by going there by bike or by public transportation?
There are these reports. So if you check out the Albert report, or you check out the SPA report, or you check out the impact reports, they're breaking down the carbon footprint for each hour of the show that you're watching. So it's absolutely insane. I mean, obviously it's based on averages, and a lot of productions that they used, because, for example, doing a carbon footprint in the UK is compulsory, so they actually get better and better data now. But I don't know if it's better to watch it at the cinema or not. I don't know how you get to the cinema, how many people are with you in your car, and all that kind of stuff. But certainly it has a large impact if you're watching. And it, like, these kind of like small things matter, like whether you're watching on Wi-Fi on your phone or you're watching on the network. It's always better to watch it like connect to the Wi-Fi and don't watch it on your network, for example, and that kind of small things.
Yeah, and I think the problem is basically with the consumption. So if you imagine how much film we just produce in 1 year, it's immense amount of film. And I think there are a lot of these things because you see these movies, it looks beautiful. It's from year to year, they have better CGI, they look better cameras, better lighting, but all the small petty details are really tuned. And if you look behind this, what is the price for this? A huge carbon footprint at the end.
I mean, we have a really bad saying which goes against our entire, I don't know, remit as a company, but we'll say that, like, what's the better, which film has the lowest carbon footprint? The one that has never gotten made. Like,
yeah.
I mean, ultimately, that's
best energy is not used energy. Definitely.
It's very interesting. Just going back to this music episode, we had this as an opening question. What is like this is most sustainable band in the world? And the guy was just telling, maybe the band that just plays the local pub and that goes there by foot and basically carries the instrument by on their back, but nobody knows them, of course.
And there's actually a lot of crossover between film and theatre, by the way, just put it in brackets. And they're trying to do a lot of great stuff in the theatre world as well. So.
And for our closing question, where do you see yourself in the future? What are your plans? Are you expanding? Are you expanding maybe to the theatre world?
Hell yeah, we're happy to expand into, I don't know, any kind of creative media sector and even beyond. And definitely, my personal goal is to do more and more productions and do a lot of them and read a lot of scripts and hopefully help the industry with a lot of stuff. But I think Julia's personal goal is very similar, but we come from like different approaches. So like I really like spending time with scripts. So that's why I highlight that bit.
Yeah, but actually one of my goals is to the scripts, because I think as film industry and also like the music industry example you just bring, like, yeah, of course the band which is not exist or the film which was not created, but we also have such huge power to connect with people, to change their minds. So like just 5.7 billion people on the whole world have television or screen at home to watch a movie or whatever, YouTube or whatever they want. So, you know, like you can connect to more than half of the world, the population. So really want to do that. And with the new script thing, I think we can built in new messages in films, and I hope more and more productions are willing to do that, because it has a matter what people see on the screen. And I think studios have, and also all the filmmakers has this as responsibility as well, not just to, entertain people.
Brilliant. Julia, Jofi, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, we appreciate your time and your shared knowledge. So thanks a lot. We really enjoyed this conversation, I think.